Hey, oh, wait a second. Why is my t-shirt on?
Ooh, Ken was trying to be sexy over there. Oh, you were succeeding. I'm sorry. You were succeeding, not trying.
All right, we're now live. Now
Yay.
looks like I've got it going. All right, I got it going on.
Ken's got it going on.
Right.
Wait.
All right. So you missed. AJ introduced me already.
I know. Ken Goldberg's Law and Disorder. This is Ken Goldberg. He is an attorney in 3 different states. And on this show, and I'm AJ with Dallas Yoga Magazine and Cosmic Yogi Festival, which is coming up soon, April 20th in Addison. Yay. Ken is still an attorney and does legal advice on a number of different areas. A little scary.
Shamefully.
Mm-hmm.
Highly unqualified, but that hasn't stopped me for 1 minute.
He's also a former Buddhist monk and still practices Buddhism and teaches meditation at the Buddhist Center of Dallas on Stoltz Road in Dallas on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. And it's awesome. Everyone is welcome. And he is going through the articles over here like a professional.
So I'm ready because you brought up the lawyering thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
I like this. That's pretty.
Which?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. As a Buddha given to me by Ajahn Sarayut in Tucson, Arizona.
Very pretty.
Ajahn Abbott. Me, recipient. All right. So
yes,
we usually start with some legal stuff, right?
Okay.
So
jumping right in. This is a tough case right here.
We're going to start with the stupidest one first and work our way up. All right. So in Australia, a guy quit his job and he sued for $1.8 million because one of his coworkers kept coming into his area and passing gas.
He was farting. Just say it.
Jesus. So this guy was passing gas.
He was farting.
Or farting, as AJ likes to say.
The article title says
right near the guy,
farting.
And then he'd walk away. And, the guy said...
Was it his boss or was the coworker?
No, he's just a coworker. So this guy finally, he felt, that this was a form of...
Abuse.
And he left that job, or maybe he got fired. I don't remember anymore. But anyways, he lost. Apparently, the courts characterized farting is not the equivalent of bullying. Let me tell you, the guy that he accused said, listen, I may have farted around him once or twice, but it wasn't a,
oh, no, well, that guy was running into his office, farting and running out and thinking it was funny.
What I'm thinking is, you come fart around me several times, they're going to have to take your head out your ass. And I meant that literally. I don't mean that figuratively. I mean literally.
But it even said the guy's office was a tiny little office with no windows and one door. So the other guy was running and farting in this tiny little office. 5 or 6 times a day. Yeah. Oh my God.
All right. So that was
what have we come to, people?
That was the lowest end of the legal barrel.
He lost $1.8 million.
Okay. Now, next one gets more serious. I am against the death penalty in almost all cases. If a guy wants to be
You're
put
against
to
the death penalty and you still eat meat?
Wow, what a segue. Let me apologize right now for
death, animals, death, people, that sort of went together for me.
I don't advocate eating animals.
Okay.
I eat them. I don't advocate it. I'm not in favor of it. And if somebody was willing to come into my life and cook vegetarian tasty vegetables,
yeah, you'd be able to eat that all the time.
I would eat it.
I'd ask if you were against death row, if you were still eating meat. Okay.
So I think there's a bit different. Anyway,
Miss Peter here.
The death penalty, I believe, for people who request it, go ahead on. I mean, some guys don't want to spend life in prison. I don't blame them. So they say, just get going.
Right.
Okay, But it should be somebody who has admitted the crime, not somebody who has tried it and convicted at trial. Because we already know that too large a percentage of trials result in a wrongful conviction. And Illinois was ground zero several years ago. The Innocence Project and some others got together and exonerated, I think, over 13 people on death row in Illinois. And Governor Ryan, at the time, who went to prison himself, but not related, he after several exonerations, he went on and created a blue ribbon panel. A blue ribbon panel means you're supposed to bring in people who are experts in the area and have something to offer on a subject. So he brought in prosecutors and defense attorneys and judges and I don't know
Just
what
an
else.
array of people,
Right.
legal people.
And they called it Blue Ribbon Panel, and they studied the subject of the death penalty in Illinois, and they made recommendations. And amongst the recommendations they made was that, first off, it's not a level playing field. A lot of times, the people that are appointed by a judge in the jurisdiction, because Illinois is a big state, so they're not all Chicago. Chicago's got a lot of highly qualified lawyers. You may be in central Illinois, you may not have that many lawyers that have experience with the death penalty. Well, they were getting appointed because for whatever reason they donated to the judge or there weren't that many lawyers. So they'd get appointed. And so the Blue Ribbon Panel said, you know, some of these people just are not qualified to do a death penalty case. And they're mostly underfunded because the government has unlimited resources. Every county really has only the resources that the budget, the electorate may compress. But otherwise, you know, if you want to prosecute somebody, you've got the police department, unlimited use of the police department, unlimited use of the prosecutor's office, and so there's rarely a fair trial. Like it's not like two combatants come out and they're of equal footing. So so what was my point? Oh, so anyways, so they said you got to be able to pay for investigators to go out and investigate. You know, so the whole
what are they
thing
investigating?
was going to cost
the murder?
Yeah. Say I'm appointed as a defense attorney. You're my client.
I've got law.
I need to get the police reports.
Okay.
I need to send you out. Oh wait, you're not the investigator. You're the client. Well, whatever. I need to send
I'm the murderer
to talk to witnesses. Now I did that myself in a lot of my cases, but I still had to hire somebody to go with me. Somebody called a prover. Every week you learn something about the law on this show.
Prover.
A prover. So what is a prover?
I don't know.
Okay, well, I'm going to tell you.
Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to go out and interview the people, and there's a police report.
Okay.
If it's a homicide, it's not usually less than maybe 15 witnesses, right?
Okay.
Of some sort. Maybe they saw something, or maybe they were told something, they heard something. People were interviewed.
Okay.
And the police wrote down, and so I didn't care for investigators because they always came back and I'm like, well, did you ask this? Did you ask that? Oh, no, got to go look for them again. So I would go out and interview my own witnesses, but you have to bring a prover. So let's say I'm interviewing a witness says, I saw the same person the police said did it. Now I go out and they say, oh yeah, no, that's not exactly what I told the police. Oh, what did you tell them? I said, yeah, that looks like him, but you know what? The guy I saw had a mustache, and your guy didn't have a mustache.
Gotcha.
So I want to make sure that if they called that witness and he suddenly gets there and says, yeah, that's the guy. I said that's the guy. And he said, and I said, excuse me, I interviewed you. Didn't you say the guy you saw had a mustache?
Right.
And if they deny it, then I can't take the stand.
The prover has to take the stand.
The prover comes in. I put the prover on the stand. I say, were you present during my interview of Billy Bob?
Gotcha.
Yes. During the interview with Billy Bob, did I ask the following question? Did you pick him out?
I didn't know this. This is so interesting.
And so the prover then impeaches the prosecution's witness by saying, yes. Okay. So if you have to go to the court, the judge, and you have to say, I have information, I should testify. The judge can say, you know, dude, that ain't right. It's not kosher. Sometimes they'll say, if that's the only way around, they may let you, but they don't like that at all. So you should take a prover. So I'd hire approvers. Anyways, it costs money, you know.
Yeah.
And you don't want to just.
I want to be a prover.
Yeah.
I want to walk around.
I was just going to say, I can't take Sally, because a lot of the homicides I did were in areas that you and me together, not a good combination.
Right.
We're not safe.
Right.
So I need a prover that
would fit into the neighborhood better.
And probably is carrying a gun.
Okay.
Okay. Most of my homicides
But you have a gun.
took place in gang-infested communities. No, I didn't have a gun in Chicago.
Oh, okay.
No. So, all right, back to the show. what were we
We were talking about the death row. So
Okay, so I don't believe in the death penalty because there's too many wrongful convictions. And so
right, I get that.
Governor Ryan
There has been a
did
lot of them.
something pretty wild and crazy. Governor Ryan said, listen, Illinois legislature, either you implement these recommendations and allocate the monies to implement it,
Right.
or I'm going to do something. And the Illinois legislature say, so we're not spending money on death
Right.
penalty people.
Right.
So the day before he left office, he's under indictment. He's going to go to prison. He himself got involved in a corruption scandal, but he was a Republican.
No wonder he wanted to fix death
No,
row.
no, because he was going to federal
I'm
prison.
totally kidding.
All right.
Well, sure, he set it up the right way. He wanted federal prison.
He commuted everybody on death row's sentence. On his last day in office, he commuted the death sentence.
So what exactly does that mean?
That means that nobody was facing the death penalty in Illinois that day.
Wow.
Everybody, he either commuted their sentence to life in prison,
Mhm.
or I guess he actually let some people out. I'm not sure how he did.
Oh, Lord.
But nobody still had the sentence of death awaiting them. The next governor, I believe, was Pat Quinn. And Pat Quinn said, well, there had already been a moratorium on, on death cases. They weren't executing anybody while Governor Ryan was working out. Governor Pat Quinn came in and said, I'm not comfortable either. I think he was a Democrat. He said, I'm going to leave the moratorium in effect. So anybody new who's convicted and sentenced to death, then I'm not going to put anybody to death until we work this out. And eventually the Illinois legislature wiped out the death penalty in Illinois.
Oh, is that how they got? Oh,
Okay.
well, that was pretty interesting in how they got rid of that. Okay.
So now we're going to what state is this? All right. So there's a Missouri case,
Yes.
and this guy was tried 6 times.
Yeah.
6 times he was tried.
Yeah.
And
That's
Hey.
a lot. That's a lot of taxpayer money right there.
so he was convicted a couple of times, and each time it went up on appeal. Each time they threw it out. And then, so even if he was convicted, he wasn't convicted. They kept sending it back to the trial court. Same prosecutor 6 times. So this went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court.
But didn't he?
Oh,
Well,
wait, this is a different case.
no, this guy was asking
Ah.
for the death penalty.
Back up. Come on. That's the next case. Right. This guy wanted to go to the gas chamber. Right?
Yes, he
Gotta get
wanted
the right-
wanted lethal gas. Correct. I don't know about the
All right.
gas
So that's
chamber, but at least
Well, that's
lethal
what they
gas.
call it.
Okay.
He
I thought
wanted
they
to
just
put
put it
that
over over
with gas instead of with
the injection.
injection. And
For
he-
some reason, he got in his head that it would be not as painful.
well, because guys have gotten screwed
I know. I've seen
during
that.
the serum where they administered it in the wrong doses, and you can't object because the first one paralyzes you.
Right.
So if you're burning up with, your veins are burning up, you can't say anything.
Right.
Right. So, anyways, here's what the Supreme Court said.
Why don't they just knock them out like they do in the dentist office and then give it to
Well,
them?
that's kind of what they're doing, but sometimes they
How does
screw
that
it up.
not
I
work?
screw it up.
Oh my God! How does that not work? They do it in the dentist office every day.
So here's what the headline says. Death row inmates are not guaranteed a painless execution. And they said, listen, even if the argument that lethal injection might be painful, he hasn't presented evidence that lethal gas is not
Right,
painful.
right.
So let's get the show on the road. He's been waiting around a long time.
2 decades,
Yeah,
20
20 years.
years.
It's time for him to go.
And I mean, he admitted to killing this person. It wasn't like this was a questionable sentence or anything. He admitted he did it.
And by the
20
way,
years.
his luck changed when Gorish was put on the Supreme Court. He had a stay of execution a couple of times before that. But then when they got that last conservative justice, it's like barbecue time.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I started to talk about this other case.
Yes, case. We're
So-
switching gears now. Okay, let's see here.
It's an important
Okay.
case.
It is
It's
a very important case. No, it's
All right.
extremely important.
I'm sorry that
It's okay.
so this guy goes on trial 6 times for murder. And this case made headlines.
6 times. How do you go on trial 6 times? I don't
Oh, I
understand
don't
that.
know, Ray Dean, if it was because he had an abscess and the injection would have heightened the pain. Didn't say that in the article, I didn't think.
What did it say?
She said it may have been because of an abscess and the injection would have heightened the pain.
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know.
That wasn't mentioned in the article at all like that.
Yeah, you're,
Yeah, I don't
you're
think-
reading more news than you should. Stick to me. So
Could be though.
why was I just
Wasn't
hitting
what we
myself?
read.
Oh, I was hitting myself in the head because this made headlines because Clarence Thomas, Justice Clarence Thomas, asked a question. See, here's the deal. Since Clarence Thomas was put on the Supreme Court, I don't know, 20 years ago,
Mhm.
he doesn't say anything. Now,
He observes.
the suspicion,
He absorbs.
There's a
and
high-
observes.
there's a high amount of suspicion that the reason he doesn't ask any questions is because he's not following half the time what's going on. Because when he was appointed to the court, nobody praised him for his keen legal intellect, which is typically one of the things of getting appointed to things like the Supreme Court, is that you gain some attention, some notoriety in some cases, infamy, but in other cases, just respect. So anyways, Clarence asked a question.
Yeah,
I
hold
was-
on. Let's give time. We're so proud of Clarence Thomas. He asked a question.
I wasn't pretty impressed with this question.
Oh, okay.
So,
I was just impressed he asked one.
so let me tell you, in every case you do in certain areas, the question of racial bias is going to come into the trial when you pick a jury. So let me another lesson in trial law. So when I'm getting ready to pick a jury, what is Thomas asking? Would you rather have sentence with without? I don't know what
What's it say?
parole. Yeah, I would rather that people get sentenced to life without parole. That was
Oh.
the question. Because at least if some evidence comes up later, which would
Well,
exonerate you,
unless they're the
you're
ones who have
alive.
admitted to it, that's a different scenario.
Well, again, you got to be able to.
If they've admitted to it,
People admit crimes they didn't do.
oh,
We talked about that last week.
I know.
Yeah. All right. So don't undo the good we've done. So race bias. Let me explain race bias in picking a jury. So here's how a jury trial goes. I'm the defense. I have a client. The prosecution is there. We have a jury pool, usually 3 times the amount of jurors they'll be needed. So if it's 12, they'll bring in something like 36.
Mhm.
And they're not in some sort of chaotic order. I am given a piece of paper with a very brief profile, their name, what they do for a living, if they're married, usually their age. I don't remember anymore if age is included. And they answered a few simple questions. Before trial, both sides will ask the judge about voir dire. Voir dire is when you interview the jurors prior to their being seated. So I will always ask to do voir dire. In other words, when the jurors come in, the potential jurors, I want to actually ask them
Right.
questions when they
Like
sit.
a bull on the TV
If
show.
I'd
Bull.
ever seen that, I could
I
respond.
really like that show. You
Well,
like that show.
Maybe I'll look at it
Okay.
sometime. All right. So somebody takes they actually sit in the jury
Yes,
box
that's what it
for
looks.
individual, but when it starts out like this. I said it would be an education. So the area where the spectators seat, it's 36 people.
Mhm.
So you put all 36 there. And the judge initially goes through a thing, introduces everybody. He introduces himself, he introduces court reporter, the stenographer, whatever, his clerk. The lawyers stand up, they introduce themselves. You tell who the defendant is, prosecution. And then the first question, or one of the first questions, is, does anybody here know any of the people
Oh,
in
okay.
this room?
Okay.
So how do you know? Well, I played tennis with Ken Goldberg. Liar, Ken Goldberg never played tennis.
I was going to say, is this
I-
a good way to get out of jury duty, just to stand up and like make up something? I'm the attorney's mistress. He won't admit it, though. I mean, what do you say? He's not going to admit it, but I'm his mistress.
Look, Milkshake Marty's joined us tonight.
Hey, Milkshake Marnie.
That's pretty cool. So back to the show. So, all right. So
Yeah,
there's
so you're
36
asking people these
So
questions.
now, whatever they say, no, none of us really know any of you. Or, yeah, he was my third grade teacher. I
Right.
haven't seen him in 20 years. He wasn't a lawyer then. Whatever. A judge. I went to school with your son.
Okay.
Whatever. It
Yeah.
gets out of the way. Do you think you can be fair and impartial despite that? Well, da da da. Okay. So the judge at that point can say, you're dismissed, or okay, let's continue. Now, what most judges like to do, because it keeps the ball rolling and
Mhm.
it cuts down the amount of time, is they like to say they're going to do the voir dire. So they'll say, if you
The
have some,
attorney doesn't do it? No, the attorney does do it. I missed what you just said.
they said the judge wants to do it
Why?
because it takes longer when the
Okay, I've never seen that. Okay.
oh, it's
I didn't know
most
that.
of the time.
Oh, so see
Yeah.
what they do on TV. is
It's
not
usually
true.
discretionary, right? There are some jurisdictions probably in the country
No, I swear I've never been paid for jury.
where you're allowed to do it, whether the judge likes it
Okay.
or not. But I've practiced in 4 or 5 states. It's usually been discretionary.
Okay.
And a lot of judges will let you do it, but they don't particularly. They're not thrilled at the idea.
Well, those trial scientists aren't going to like that, though.
Well, no, because they don't get to do much, but they sit there anyways. So a judge will say, "Listen, Goldberg, you got an issue. You write down whatever questions I'll ask."
Oh, okay.
I'm like, Judge, I want to ask the questions. Why? Because the judge doesn't ask them the way I'm going to ask them. And it can be
No,
a
I
simple.
agree. I
So
think
when
they're
I did the
finishes.
trial here in federal court,
Yeah.
That I've talked about in the past, the Dan Peavy trial,
Mhm.
there was a big jury
Oh.
pool.
I didn't know you. Okay.
Oh, I didn't tell you?
No.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, did you work in the schools when he was the school
No.
not superintendent? Anyways, I did a big corruption case, and there was a major issue in the case because he was a racist, or he was accused of being a racist.
Did his attorney just slip there for a second?
Well, no, the facts are in. He was recorded
And he
by
was a racist.
somebody
Yes.
saying a lot of really horrible things.
Okay.
I became his attorney and his buddy's attorney. And so there was this issue, and the judge, the federal judge, again, it's discredited. He said, I am going to do voir dire, but I'm going to let you lawyers do voir dire around publicity. So you will be able to take the individual jurors, once I've agreed to them, you'll put them in the jury box, and you'll be allowed to ask them about pre-trial publicity and its effect on them. You will not be allowed to ask them about what magazines they read, what's their license plate say.
Fair.
Well, I don't think anybody gives a damn what you think.
Well, no, but I'm being serious. I thought the attorneys were able to pick your client. If I was being charged with something I didn't do, I'd want my attorney to be picking the jury pool.
So they went to the polls in Chicago. Just want you making that announcement because it came in over the wire. So we're talking about jury selection and
Jury
racial bias. So I did this murder trial in Chicago, and this is a good example. Okay, so my client was black. He was 19 at the time the offense was alleged. He was 22 by the time we went to trial, so the publicity had died down. And so I'm watching the prosecutor, and every time there's a black person in the jury pool, we're asking some questions. I had a nephew who was charged with a crime. He's asking they be dismissed for cause. You want them dismissed for cause
Right.
if you can do it, because you get to save your peremptories. Your peremptories, you usually don't have to give an excuse.
Right.
So you get, say you get 6, but I don't like her. She's a housewife, but I can't get her off for that. But I don't like housewives on my jury. Okay? She's a housewife. Have anything else on her? Peremptory, right? So I'm watching them, and there's 2 ways I'm going to go with them. I see them knocking blacks off, and so I'm going to challenge them. I make what is called a Batson challenge. And that's called a Batson challenge because the Supreme Court ruled in a case with the name Batson in it that a prosecutor had to have a race-neutral reason to exclude somebody from the jury. And we're talking specifically about excluding people of color. This wasn't about white people.
But isn't there always something you can find to exclude someone?
She's already ahead of us, isn't she? But back to my story.
Okay, I'm sorry. That just, yeah.
So I make a Batson challenge, and the judge, he says, we'll go in chambers and discuss this. I brings a court reporter in. What is it, Mr. Goldberg? What is it this time?
You were a pain in the ass to every judge
wait,
you're ever in front of.
Remind me to tell you about what a pain in the ass I was in that trial. Anyways, we go in chamber. I said, well, I actually challenged these prosecutors, and one had been practicing 15 years, longer than I had been practicing. And the judge says, well, I just want the record to show before we even get into it that I have worked with these two prosecutors for numerous years, and I've never seen either one of them act like a racist. Well, the judge was Italian. He's from Chicago. He's the racist first and foremost. Okay. I forget everybody else. So I have to say to him, Judge, I didn't accuse anybody of being a racist. I'm in court making a legal challenge under the Supreme Court ruling of Batson, and I want to hear them defend their exclusion of black people from the jury. And so they do, and they say, good, let's go, back out into the court and continue. I managed to get just enough black people on that jury to win an acquittal. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, it's no BS. I mean, literally, when I won, he signed a 5-page confession. You talk about confessions? This kid signed a 5-page confession to the homicide. He was accused of, did we talk about this previously?
I think we had a little bit.
Yeah, mm-hmm. So he shot one, he wounded 5, 6 people. Mm-hmm. So, I said that. I think I told you that after the trial, I said something to this lady about, did you like me?
Yes. Yeah, she said no.
Right.
What's it matter? We won.
So the case was such that my client, who was 19 at the time and was marginally involved with gangs, had killed the brother of the biggest gang member out in the streets at the time. So
how did he survive in prison?
He wasn't in prison. He was in jail for 2 years. Well, he survived because he didn't do it.
Oh.
The gangs knew he didn't do it.
Oh, okay.
Cops just didn't know he didn't do it, right?
Okay. So I was like, how did he even survive?
So afterwards, when I'm talking to the jury, I said to them, because they wanted to know after the trial, they said, we don't know that he's not guilty. Mm-hmm. We found him not guilty because they failed to meet their burden.
Gotcha.
And in typical Goldberg fashion of speaking before I think, I went back into the jury room and I said, thank you for finding him innocent. And they quickly corrected me and said, we didn't find him innocent. We found him not guilty. And so I said, okay, can I tell you what you didn't hear during the trial? Because a lot of facts are kept out.
Right.
Judge rules, a lot of stuff can't come in. So I went to town on them and they said, thank you. And I said, one of the things I was trying to drive home is that dead guy was the brother of the leader of the Gangster Disciples. Mm-hmm. So I know my client's innocent because he's alive.
Right.
And 2 of the white jurors said to me that one of the black men pointed that out to them.
Right.
They would not have gotten that in the course of the trial.
Correct.
I was inferring it.
Right.
I was trying to drive it home. He got it.
Right.
He was a city resident. They were suburban residents. He told them, and that helped them to form their opinion.
Right.
Okay. So, all right. So race plays a role. And so now this guy goes on trial 6 times.
But what you just said, race played a role in that it was the environment that played a role of where these people lived and how they grew up.
It played a role in if the prosecutor had been successful in eliminating all black people from the jury, that man would not have been there to have explained.
Correct. And in his environment from the past has formed him, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So now this guy in where was this case? It doesn't matter. You can figure it out. You're better at this stuff. You remember. Anyways, he went on trial 6 times.
Yeah, he did.
5 times unsuccessfully. There were hung juries. There were convictions that were overturned.
Yep.
Finally, during the 6th trial, they win, and they've got, I think, 2 or 3 black people on there. And the Kentucky Supreme Court says, for the 6th time.
No, they had 1 black person on the jury, 11 white.
So the Kentucky Supreme Court said, I think it was Kentucky. Why do I think Montgomery
County?
Anyways, they said it's good to go. Even though you're alleging racial bias, they gave race neutral reasons. It went up to the Supreme Court, and here's an interesting thing. Even the conservative members, as far to the right as some of them are, said, wait a second, the Supreme Court of that state was unwilling to look at the history of this prosecutor eliminating Black people from the jury. He had been obviously doing it. One of
Right.
the things they looked at was how many questions did he ask Black jurors
Yeah,
or
and
potential
they
jurors
did say
versus
that,
white?
yes.
Like lots more questions.
Right.
Because he's probing for some reason
To get rid of
to
them.
get rid of them. He
Mhm.
don't want to use his peremptories. But if he uses peremptories, he's going to kick them. So
Right. That's very, yeah. They said that. The white
So-
jurors even commented on that.
So the Supreme Court is like, you know what? I don't know if they ruled on this one. Did they send it back down? I don't remember. But so the fourth and fifth trial were hung juries. There were convictions that were overturned, and they pretty much said this prosecutor. Let me
It's
paraphrase.
Mississippi. That makes sense.
Listen, they kind of the Supreme Court kind of said this guy's a piece of crap. It's
Mhm.
really unusual to take an anti-prosecutorial position in the Supreme Court,
Right.
especially from the conservatives.
Right.
There was actually here's an explanation of the Batson challenge. Okay, the Supreme Court came up with a three-part standard. If a defendant challenges peremptory, and it says peremptory, but I got news for you, I can challenge a for cause strike too. I don't know why they said just peremptory. Maybe that's the law, and it didn't matter to me. I was objecting.
Yeah,
anyway.
because the whole thing says that.
Yeah.
They didn't say
So
that.
the defendant must establish a plausible case of discrimination. You do that by saying, hey, every time a Black person sits in the jury box, he comes up with an excuse to get rid of them.
Right.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
there's always an excuse. You can always find something to get rid of.
Well,
someone.
in Cook County, Illinois, Chicago, they're going to say he had a relative who was arrested, so they ate the police.
Right.
Because numerically, the probability of any Black family
Right.
having somebody who's been accused of a crime or convicted of a crime is astronomical.
Right. Sure.
Because, well, we know, I think national statistics, 2/3 of all Black males will fall under the jurisdiction of the criminal courts at some time in their life. Colin Powell
That's a
said,
huge percentage.
Colin Powell gave a speech and he said, statistically, my son is more likely to go to prison than to go to college. I would have voted for him for president. So,
Yeah, he was smart. He didn't want to run.
so you got to come up with a race neutral reason. And so, if a judge accepts this answer, well, she had a nephew. This literally happened to me. Yeah, she had a nephew who was charged with a crime. Can't trust her to, like the police,
Right. Right.
kind of thing.
Right.
So what I found is, OJ. OJ's always been a good example for me. It has been often said that OJ got off because there were several Black women in the jury. I don't even know if it's several. There were a number of Black women in the jury. There were a number of Black people in the jury. And people have just been very quick to dismiss that verdict by saying he got off because, Black people didn't want to convict OJ Simpson. Listen, I've done a lot of trials. I haven't found much reluctance on the part of Black people to convict Black people. They're sitting there. They took an oath. It's not their son. It's just some guy. It's like, yeah, he's guilty. Send him to prison, right? No. I'm gonna tell you why OJ walked. He walked because what's his name? The blood guy, the defense attorney, that's a specialist from the Innocence Project, walked them to a not guilty by showing that the blood, which was the primary evidence in the case,
Mhm.
was bad in, bad out. That was the theme. And he showed that they collected it wrong, stored it wrong.
I thought it
produced
was
wrong.
because it didn't fit.
Yeah, that ain't why. All right. So now they made a comment here at the end of the article. Thurgood Marshall, which there's been movies made about Thurgood. He was a civil rights attorney, and he ultimately became a Supreme Court judge.
Mhm.
And the difference between him and Clarence Thomas, okay, one was liberal, one's conservative, is Thurgood Marshall, even by conservatives, was treated as a tremendous adversary. He was so back when in 1986, when they did Batson, he was on the court. It says here he was the first African American justice. I didn't know that. That makes sense. 1986.
And still in his,
Did you see what Ginsburg said? She was asked how many women would be enough on the Supreme Court, and she said 9. And they're like, "Oh, you won't be happy till there's 9 women because there's 9 seats." And
Right.
she said, "Ain't nobody complained for the first 200 years or whatever that it's been all men,
that is true.
right?"
Oh, that was a good answer on
Yeah.
her part.
So like, hey,
All right.
yeah.
That was a
Oh, but
good
she don't complain
answer.
if there's 9 women. She's like, no.
Oh, that's awesome.
Homie don't play that.
That was a good answer on her part.
So
Mhm.
he said in his concurring opinion in Batson, thought this was interesting. Misuse of the peremptory challenge to exclude black jurors has become both common and flagrant. The only way to fix the problem would be to get rid of peremptory challenges altogether. And I don't get it. You have for cause and you have peremptory. And I found I needed peremptory. For instance, my first trial, one of the jurors was a former investigator for the prosecutor's office. He had spent 20 years
Oh my
as a
God.
county sheriff assigned to the prosecutors.
Okay.
So I said, I raised my hand.
Yes.
Judge, I would ask this juror to be dismissed for cause. What's your cause, counsel? I said, well, he worked for the prosecutor for 20 years. And he says, and this is what they was saying, do you believe you can be fair and impartial and render a verdict based on the evidence only? Yes, sir. Of course, he's going to
Of
say he
course.
knows
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he says, well,
Unless
so
he wanted off. See, I would have gone, no, sir.
yeah,
No,
no,
sir.
they're going to jam you up. So I had to use a peremptory on him. So let's say I got 6. Now I got to get rid of this mucky muck with one of mine. So now I'm down to 5 that I may have 5 of them I already know I want off because the judge is acting that way. Oh, God, I'm upset now. All right, so
But I think that trial scientist is interesting. You know, those people who go in and pick the juries depending on their answers, and they're the other ones asking the questions.
so
I think that's interesting.
and I use those people.
But I think they're interesting. I don't know why. I just find it interesting, that science.
So I used I studied with Jerry Spence. And Jerry Spence showed us how to talk
Read
to
'em.
jurors.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much read them, but to use them, to teach them right from the beginning. So when you've got a jury or a jury pool,
Mm-hmm.
and you say, well, are you inclined to believe that AJ is guilty just because she's sitting here beside me, accused of a crime? Yeah, I think more likely than not. Yeah. And so what Jerry would point out is people usually run from that on, they want to exclude that juror. And he said, first off, try to convert them. Second of all, use them as a lesson. Well, you understand the judge is going to give you an instruction to only consider your trial. So
Right.
if you have an opinion already about guilt or innocence, you understand that would be contrary to what the judge would say. So he says, even
Right.
if he's not listening, the other jurors, you're
But how do
teaching
you? I don't see. If I had a preformed opinion of the situation that I truly believed, I would have a very difficult time changing it. I guess I could, but I mean, it happens. Yeah, you see different evidence and you see different sides. and-
Well, so Jerry Spence and I went
hard.
on the road and we came back and I took the trial that I told you about, 1996. I got my article on the floor here somewhere. So the jury pool, I'm picking the jury.
Mhm.
I'm getting aboard darn publicity, as is the prosecution, federal government. There's, by the way, there's 2 or 3 of them. There's one of me, and then these 2 mopes that were supposed to be trying the case with me. Oh, anyways, yes, call your lawyers. I just smirched your character. Everybody knows who you are. Anyway, so there's 3 lawyers, and so
Can't get them to behave.
so what was my point?
I don't know. I just can't get you to behave.
So this really bizarre incident took place the first day,
Mhm.
where it came out in the course of picking the jury, information that was not going to be made available. It was before the jury came in the room. before the jury came in the room, another lawyer who was leaving the case brought out in public that one of my clients had been convicted of murder 25 years earlier. The judge had ruled that would not come out
But
during
now
the
it's
trial.
public. So did he do that on
Well,
purpose?
it was kind of public already because it's public record,
Okay.
but now it's the day of trial. We're picking a jury. So that night's newspaper said, oh, very famous lawyer. This guy was a famous
Right.
lawyer. You know,
So he did it on purpose.
he was being a jerk
Right. He
Yeah.
did it on purpose.
because he was getting jammed up, right? So that's another story. He went off the case and I screwed him up.
Okay.
So wait. So the next day we come to court, and this has been news. Now, jurors are told after they're sworn in, you may not read anything or listen to anything
Right.
or watch anything on the case. You're not to discuss it with your spouse or your friends. You and you alone are to hear the evidence in the case along with the other 11 jurors. You and you alone will decide the outcome. Please do not take in any information.
Right.
So I go to the judge and I said, I'm guessing you saw the newspaper. Yeah. He said, well, I tell you what, we're going to go back to these jurors because we hadn't started
Right.
hearing evidence. He said, and we're going to ask them if they read the article or saw anything about it. So asked. Everybody's like, yeah, no, I didn't read the newspaper. One woman, yeah. So, okay, everybody else out of the room, lady, come on up here. Judge Solis, His Honorable Solis. Apparently they don't call him judge. Only Ken does. Anyways, that's the story. So they say, he says, well, what did you read? She said, I read that he was convicted of murder, 20 years ago.
Right.
And he says, okay. And he says, you're witness to the lawyers, the prosecution.
Right.
And so they're all asking questions, and I'm sitting there. It's my client.
Right.
And they said, okay, Mr. Goldberg. And I said, so you read the article, blah, blah, blah. You understand that was 20 years ago? She said, yeah. I said, a long time ago, and, whatever. She said, yeah. Okay. So judge says, what are we going to do? Right? Prosecution says, this looks like, I don't know. I mean, clearly they're going to kick her off, right?
Right.
The other two lawyers said, well, we moved to kick her off. Well, let's see what Mr. Goldberg has to say, because after all, it's Mr. Goldberg's client. And I said, well, I think we'll leave her.
Did everybody
And
look at you like
everybody
you're crazy?
looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, what? And I said, well, here's my thinking. I'm thinking there's a lot of jurors lying about it. She's the only one honest to tell us she read it.
Right.
I kind of like that. It's kind of refreshing. So the other two go nuts. The other two lawyers that were in the case,
Right.
they're like, we can't have this. This guy's out of his mind. They didn't know me. I
Right.
mean, they just met me the day before
Right,
for the
right.
very first time in their lives. And the judge said, well, you know what? It's his client. Forget about it. Let's go. She's in. So she stayed in. I get a phone call from Jerry Spence. He's like, what's going on? How,
Right.
Bring me up to date. And I'm telling him all about the trial and about the voir dire. And I tell him about this lady. And he says, you did what? And I said, yeah, I left her on the jury. He says, oh my God, Ken. This is my mentor. This is the guy that I thought had taught me that I was doing the right thing. He's like, oh, you got to get her off. And I'm like, well, it's a little late. Well,
Weren't you afraid you can tell the other people if they hadn't read anything?
I didn't know what to expect. So Jerry says, get her out. Keep an eye out. If she so much as closes her eyes, like she's sleeping, you move to strike her during the trial, right? So I spent 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Staring at her.
Wait.
Staring at her.
And you get a break. You get breaks throughout the trial. I mean, they bathroom breaks, right?
Mhm.
She's a smoker.
Okay.
She and this other lady's got to be tight. You'd always see them, and you could smoke in the building then,
Oh yeah.
in the federal courthouse.
Yeah.
So they would go down to the smoking end, and they would pass me, and you're not allowed to talk.
Right.
And I'd smile. They never smiled at me. And I'm like, she's gonna kill me. She's killing me here, So 3 weeks later, we got an acquittal
Okay.
on all charges, 42 counts. So I go back.
42 counts.
Oh, they were charged with everything. They were charged with
Oh my
tax
God.
evasion, extortion, bribery, money, and
42. Oh man.
so I went back.
I would have
back
left
to
the
talk-
country.
I went back to talk to the jurors, and so I told you before they call me
42
Columbo.
count- Yeah, I called you Columbo.
Same case. But here's what I didn't tell you. So finally, they've answered all the questions. They've answered my question. They're getting up to leave. She's sitting there. And I said, I got to ask you.
Yeah.
She said, yeah. I said, what did you think? She said, I felt like I had to bend over backwards to be fair to you.
Oh, interesting.
She said, and if I needed a lawyer, I'd hire you.
Okay.
So there you go.
Did you
All
give me a
right.
card immediately then?
I don't think I had a card then. So listen, I don't know if anybody's listening to the show. If you have questions, you can type them in your keyboard. I'll try to answer them.
Oh
Last
my
week we
God.
said we were going to cover a subject. I strolled down memory lane. I assume most of you turn off your computers or go on and do something else. And you and I are just here carrying on like anybody gives a damn what we got to say. Right? I'm educating you
We're
about.
having a good time. I'm learning.
I'm educating you about the criminal justice system here. And everybody's like, it's like, dude, I am playing, solitaire. I have no idea. I don't care what.
Joe plays bridge all the time. It's like, oh my
Oh,
God, bridge.
All right, so this is the topic we said we were going to talk about last week.
Yeah,
I didn't refresh my recollection, but I have some strong
I
opinions.
did.
And by the way, I did publish a blog.
Yes, it was very good.
It was partisan. It was political in nature, and it was partisan. And I make no apologies for it because the dialogue, which it should be called the diatribe, it's been coming out of that place in Washington, D.C., that this stuff. Anyways, because, remember John Kennedy said, Ich nein ein Berliner, I am a Berliner. I'm a Berliner.
A Berliner. Okay.
He was, because it was divided.
Mhm.
And he, and,
Right.
Viva la Raza kind
Right.
of thing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so, ich mein Puerto Rican. Yo soy un puertorriqueño. Okay.
I don't even think we need to pick a Hispanic country. I just think it's any Hispanic country.
Well,
we
but
need
today,
to, oh my
because
God.
AJ doesn't get to read the news. So some of you may know that earlier today, there was a whole dialogue where
Yeah.
Washington, certain people in Washington said, one, Puerto Rico had received $91 million so far
And they have-
in response to the hurricane, but the real number was 11. Now, I don't know how many people who support Trump can count a billion. It's a big, and if you have 11 billion here and 91 here, there's this big space on the continuum that's empty, right? Okay, so I took exception to that. His deputy press secretary was on the air and he kept referring to Puerto Rico place and I think His Royal Highness referred to it as a country because he doesn't understand what it is to be a territory of the United States. So yo soy un
Well, he probably
puertorriqueño.
doesn't even know it is.
Well, but it's so easy to find out. You see, if you live in the White House, let me explain this. There are all these little offices, some bigger, some filled with people whose job it is to advise you, to
Just ask a question, dude. Ask a question.
where's Puerto Rico?
Is it a state? Is it a separate country? What's a territory?
All he heard was they don't get the vote for president. So he's like, well, I'm going to throw him under the bus. Anyways, but I worked north
You
side
don't
of
see
Chicago.
it.
And what?
But it's a Hispanic thing. It's all the what
People of color.
somebody must not have had sex with him in college or something that was Hispanic and he got mad. I mean, something's not good here. I don't get it.
So the Cato
He
Institute.
really doesn't like Hispanic people.
So you can read my blog. I don't even know where you get it. I guess it's on the Law and Disorder page at some point. There's a link to
Yes.
my blog.
There's a link to your blog.
Yeah.
And
So
Ken
Ken
Gober's Law and Disorder.
lawanddisorder.com. Okay. So this guy from the Cato Institute is a very well-respected think tank. They study things, and this guy has been studying drug prohibition. And he starts out the article. I really like this. Why do heroin addicts get cages and alcoholics get treatment?
It's a good point.
Okay. It's the same
Looking at
disease.
two recovering-
According to the medical community, it's the
recovering
same
people here.
disease, right? Because
Yes.
it's addiction.
It's addiction.
And in fact, most of you didn't know this, and you're not even going to understand maybe when I say this. Alcohol is more toxic than heroin. Physiologically, the effect of alcohol on the body is a greater physiological effect on your internal organs than heroin. That's a fact. Take that to the bank. Anyways, he goes on to talk about
This article shocked me. I did want to tell you this because I did not know how strong fentanyl was compared to heroin.
So I wish I had thought, you know what, we may have to wait another week because I'm watching Columbo. Matthew says,
Well, you missed that point because the jury told him that you were acting like Columbo, like they thought you didn't know what you were doing, and then all of a sudden you pulled it through and like just came out with this great big thing at the end.
Well, and I only probably watched Columbo maybe twice. Peter Falk.
Yes.
Yeah. And he used to walk around, his pants were too big. He was all baggy and schlemiel. We call him schlemiels, and he would always talk to you like he didn't know what was going on.
And look at you, use your hands all the time too.
Yeah. So, and by the way, because I can't do this because it's too,
we're not going to have enough
too
time.
intensive.
We're going to do this first next time.
So I thought that was interesting because one of the jurors said to me, I thought this was your first trial when you started. It was 96 and I was ordained. I was considered ordained. I was licensed in 87.
Mm-hmm.
So what? I was 9 years into my practice.
Right.
And I saw Jerry Spence in my 7th year.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said to her, well, the problem is I didn't get the case until Saturday.
Right.
And the reason Jerry Spence got agitated with me was he left me on Friday and I took the case on Saturday.
Right.
And his thing was, if you had a case going to trial in federal court on Monday, I would have known because I was with you for 30 days.
Oh.
Surely it would have come up in conversation.
Well, you didn't get it till he left. Right.
So he found out when the Dallas Morning News faxed him in Wyoming and said,
Right.
would you like to do you have any comment to make about your protege Ken Goldberg on trial in Dallas?
Oh my God.
So
after he found out what you did, he was like, no, he's a dumbass.
Well, it was a fax, so he didn't respond. He called me, or he had somebody call me and say, what's up? And I was like, oh, well, Jerry, it's kind of convoluted. But what happened was I was sitting there watching this trial in federal court. I was invited by the defendants, and this guy was doing such a bad job. This very famous attorney was doing such a bad job of picking the jury. And the clients asked me, would you take the case? And I said, no, of course not. I can't take the case. And somewhere along the line, I accidentally said, of course, I'll take the case. I said, I can't do any worse than this jerk.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So I went up to the judge and I said, Judge,
God, help us.
I'm going to go ahead and take the case. Fine with me. If your client wants you, and he told the other guy, you can leave now. So the guy left.
Was he jumping for joy as he was leaving?
Yeah, because Representative Darley Routier, who got the death penalty, okay, he left to go. He had been hired, good money, to go down to Kerrville and represent the biggest murder case in the state of Texas.
So
she
he
was
just wanted
accused
out.
of killing her sons. So he wanted out.
Mm-hmm.
He thought he was going to walk off this case, and I jammed him up. I used a legal technique to keep him from getting off the case without the client's consent.
Okay.
So he was going to stick it to the client. I'm watching him stick it to the client during the jury selection. He's not asking any questions.
Oh.
So anyway, so I got the case, and jury said, that's not cool.
Well, yeah, that's what Ken does. Sometimes you do a lot of not cool things.
He said,
but you did help. I mean, you did help.
A great story came out of that. You may not think it's a great story. I thought He told me I could call Racehorse Haynes
Yes.
in Houston, Texas, very
Uh-huh.
famous lawyer. He said,
Absolutely.
you tell him that I said you call Jerry Spence,
Mhm.
you know, and I'd met Racehorse with Jerry.
Mhm.
He said, you tell him what I said, and you got to get off this trial. And what do you do? Because he's been in that court. So I called Racehorse, and he called me back later that night. Yeah, you know, I say, you know, Jerry's, and Racehorse is one of these good old boys.
Right. Right.
About 4 feet tall, ex-Marine, and a drunk. Back then,
Back then. Okay.
he got cleaned up towards the end. And so he's like, Ken, Jerry's absolutely right. You know, you shouldn't have took that case. You're in deep trouble, son. So he said, now here's what you're going to do. You're going to do just what Jerry said. You're going to go up there in court tomorrow, and you can go before the judge. You're going to make a motion withdrawal from the case. You're going to tell the judge you made a big
You're
mistake.
doing a great accent here.
And you made a big mistake. And he said, now, listen to me, Ken. Judge going to tell you, overrule. Sit down. We're going to trial. He's like, you ain't getting out this trial, boy. He said, so let's talk about how you're going to win this.
Okay.
Yeah, so he spent about 40 minutes with me on the phone talking about strategy.
That was cool.
Yeah, it
That
was.
was really
And sure
nice.
enough, he was right. I went into court the next day, did what he said. I went up and I said, you know, Judge, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have took this case. I was being rash and yada, yada, yada. And the judge
Well, why did he tell you to do that? You knew the judge wasn't going to let you
make
off
a
anyway.
record,
That you were
trying to make a record, because both he and Jerry were convinced that, one, I would lose the case,
right.
and I would be accused of incompetent counsel.
Oh, okay.
So that these guys would file legal motions afterwards saying that this idiot took this case
Okay.
and he lost.
Gotcha.
You know, it's not because we're guilty. Well, the outcome is
So
I won. So there is
Yeah.
no.
So there was no
there's
right.
no-
Right.
right. Nobody was alleging
So
anything.
anytime an attorney loses a case, you can go and sue him and say he's incompetent.
They don't sue you necessarily. They go to appellate court
Okay.
and they say that
They
For
just want to do
instance,
case.
there was a death penalty case where the lawyer fell asleep during the trial.
No way.
He fell asleep at various times, and
Kidding me.
no, it went up on appeal. Listen to this: courts do not like to overturn trial courts. So I always tell a client, people say, "Well, you know, if we lose a trial, we can still appeal." Yeah, but you don't understand. When you go to trial,
Wow.
the burden is on the government to prove you're guilty, right? The beyond a reasonable doubt. So every
Right.
criminal case, that's the way it is. The moment you're convicted, the burden has shifted. It's no longer on them. Now you have to prove that somehow this was wrong, right? So you don't get the presumption of innocence anymore. You get the opposite. So now you go up and you're arguing
Wow.
that this was mishandled.
Sure.
Well, this guy slept. So the guy's like, my lawyer fell asleep a couple of times during the trial. And
Oh my
Uh,
God. Does that really happen? Obviously.
well, the court said, yes, there is evidence that he fell asleep, but it is not reversible error. In other words, it's not cool, but we don't think it affected
Well,
the
how
outcome
does
of the
he know he
case.
didn't miss something that he should have objected to or something? Can't believe that the guy fell asleep and they said, oh, it's not a reversible error. He might have missed a whole big part of the. Oh, my lordy.
She's telling you the truth. That's exactly what every defense lawyer would be thinking. How do you know you didn't miss something? You know, and I practically got narcolepsy. I can fall asleep anywhere. I've never fallen asleep in court.
Right.
I'm just like,
Right.
It's
Well,
like
you're
a-
too, yeah,
it's like
you
you're
have too much.
mainlining
You have
amphetamine
anxiety
to
and
thing.
stress too.
So
you're like,
anyways.
yeah.
So that's what happened. I don't know why.
Wow.
Who's Matlock? Matlock was
Oh, yeah, Matlock.
what was his name? Andy of Mayberry. Who's that? What's his real name? Andy Griffith. Yeah, Tom thinks Matlock not Columbo, but I beg to differ. Okay, so let's wrap it up.
Okay, let's wrap it up.
Tell him about things like my meditation, your yoga.
So Ken Goldberg's meditation, because he is an ordained Buddhist monk, was. Well, can you ever take the ordained away? Technically, the ordained.
No,
And he has a beautiful meditation. All religions are welcome at the center. And if you've never been to the Buddhist Center of Dallas, it's amazing.
so beautiful.
I can't even describe. It's just unbelievable. And like I said, everybody's welcome. And he does an hour meditations Wednesdays at 7 p.m. That is just magnificent. And I am AJ, Dallas Yoga Magazine. And I have Cosmic Yogi Festival coming up April 20th. It's the largest yoga festival in Texas. And yes, I put it on Dallas Yoga Magazine. So I expect everybody to be there April 20th in Addison, Texas, largest yoga festival in Texas. Okay, so we'll see you next week, Tuesday, 6 o'clock. And if you need us, email AJ, Dallas Yoga Magazine. Okay. Ken's coming. He's going to say goodbye real quick. You going to say goodbye?
Do I say bye real quick or just bye?
Bye.
I can say it
Wave.
real quick.
Wave. Say
Wait,
goodbye.
hold on.
Goodbye.
I'm going to say it real quick. Goodbye.
That was good. There you
I like to be a man of your word.
go.
All right. Peace out.
Peace out.
La da 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 da. Ashes, ashes, all fall down.